to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, February 5th here, Fantasy Footballers Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
How's it going, boys?
What's up?
I love this time of year. Prospect season, it's so fun, man.
It is fun, man. I love digging in, especially, there are the scouts, right? The real scouts, the people who do this year-round where their entire job is just knowing prospects. They know all the prospects 2-3 years out. They do it year-round. They follow the ball. They follow college, and that's wonderful. Those guys do amazing work. We stand on their shoulders. But there is something special and different and unique and fresh set of eyes type of perspective when you come this time of year, at least for me. I mean, I know you guys follow college a little bit more than I do. We're so busy with the NFL. I don't watch the college season other than big giant games, the college playoffs. So when this time of year rolls around, when the combine list comes out, when the declares are made and you start scouting these players, I don't have these, preconceived notions, these biases of like this guy, I've loved him for 2 years when he came, I'm just watching tape and looking at production profiles, and it's so fun to learn them. And then with the sole exception of having to sometimes learn names that are like, what? How do you say this guy's name?
Like Byshal Tootin?
Oh, we're tootin'.
Great name.
We're not talking about him this week, but let's just say when I found out his name and found out some more background info of people, I'm like, okay, this is what I live for, because we each kind of bring our own different flavor. And like you said, Betz, he's a Penn State homer. So he's going to bring up Penn State players and talk about how great they are and what that's like. I'm from SEC country, so I might be a little bit biased towards certain players in the SEC, but I would say we have different eyes when we look at film. So there's a player that Betz and I were DMing back and forth about. We have a complete opposite opinion, and I think that's okay.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and he wants to say I'm wrong. I say I could be wrong, and that's just the difference in how we talk about things.
Kyle, I don't know if you understand this, but your takes on February 5th, that sticks with you throughout the entire player's career. So you better get it right today, okay? Because if you miss, your job could be on the line here.
It is obviously worth noting that when you first are scouting these players, you got to leave room to be wrong, to adjust. There's going to be a lot more information that comes out. Right now it's funny because one of the things, we're talking about running backs. We're talking about the top running back prospects today. And if you're talking about the elite running backs, the guys that make all the difference in fantasy, I care a lot about weight. How much do they weigh? And it's funny because right now you might be writing down, and I got my black little book, and I'm writing down all their weights, and it's like, okay, this guy's 215, that's fantastic. And when he weighs in at 202, I'm going to change how I feel a little.
I was looking at, I do this too, where I look at players like high school film and kind of their recruiting background. And I saw a player that was listed as 6'3", and I'm like, dude, in high school, were you really 6'3", and now you're a running back? And now he's listed at 6 foot. And so we will get all those measurements that will slightly change things. And when we talk about some of these players, especially at running back, some of them, they just look taller than maybe the itty-bitty players, the Devon Achans, where they kind of run upright. And so we'll talk about those from a scouting perspective, give a range of outcomes, because every single one of these players, we can say, this is what I like about them. Here's the production profile. We still don't know their exact draft capital, and we don't know their landing spot in their scheme. And so we'll talk about that as we move forward throughout the process. So I hope this episode is helpful for you to get introduced to the running backs, but also, we're going to have a couple of updates to this. So, a month from now, it's okay if Jason says, hey, that running back that I really like, he came in, 20 pounds lighter, or, he's only 5'9", 200. It's like, that kind of changes how we look at things slightly. Not everything, but it does change. So just saying right now.
Not just then, but then there's guys that we love, like last year, this time of year. I mean, it is no secret, if you were with me all year. We continued joking about it and having fun about it. But Troy Franklin was a prospect I absolutely adored. When he fell into the 4th round of the NFL draft, that, it's like, adjust. That's not, he wasn't a highly drafted guy. He didn't land in a spot that was great for him, and lo and behold, he was pretty worthless. So and before being worthless, tumbled down the draft rankings. And you need to be able to adjust, because here's the thing. What ADP is set right now this time of year, it does not adjust enough when the NFL draft happens. So like Troy Franklin, who I loved, was still lower in my rankings than he was where he was getting drafted in average draft position, because pre-NFL draft, it was like, oh, he was back of the first type of guy. It's like, this is a 3rd round dart throw.
Right. And I don't know if you felt this way. Last week I was talking about it with Mike and Betz, but it's also, there's a temptation right now of us basically copying each other's papers, where, you get this scouting report, or you heard somebody who was comp like, oh, he's kind of like this player. And it's really easy because we get little pieces of information, little pictures of here's how they run, here's how they do this, to kind of end up like everybody has a bunch of groupthink. And that's why I think you said that, Jason. A lot of players that you have slotted in as, I don't know, the 108. That's just where he goes. He's the 108 in rookie drafts. Like, leave room for that to change over the next couple weeks. That's all I'm really saying. And so sometimes I'm a bit harsh because we are in a space that has a lot of different opinions, and the draft is awesome. There are so many conversations you get to have over the next couple of weeks and months even, of us saying, like, here's who this player is, but here's a range of outcomes. And so we have all of that for you in the Dynasty Pass, which is part of the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. That releases, pre-order release, on Super Bowl Sunday, Jason. So that's right around the corner.
Yeah, you can get it at ultimatedraftkit.com. The UDK Plus is the one that comes with the Dynasty. It's got the season-long stuff, all your guys' prop bets through the season. There's so much content in there. So on Super Bowl Sunday, it releases. You can also, if you're a supporter at Join the Foot, our Foot Clan membership, if you're an Ultimate Foot Clan member, this is new this year, okay? So this isn't how we used to work. The Ultimate Foot Clan membership at jointhefoot.com, that gives everything we have all year round entirely, including the UDK Plus. So a lot of people already have that. You might have gotten that during the season. This last year is like, oh, I want the Ultimate Dashboard, the waiver wire pickup, all those tools. If you did that, well, guess what? On Super Bowl Sunday, you already have the Dynasty Pass. It's there for you. So whether you go to ultimatedraftkit.com, get the UDK Plus, that's great. Or if you go to jointhefoot.com and just become a member so you have everything we ever release year round, both are great options.
Can't go wrong.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm looking right now, we're in the middle of a rookie mock draft that will be published as a part of that on Super Bowl Sunday. Betz, you're at the 107, Jason at the 109, I'm at 111. We have some other of our writers, and then we also have Andy and Mike in there too. But it's funny to see the process now, and we will have updates for that mock draft throughout the process too. We'll do mock drafts on the show coming up. So we have a lot of content when it comes to rookies. I mean, that's the season we're in. I did want to start us off with a quick question, and I'll shoot with you first, Betz, but can you give me one lesson that you have learned for yourself in the rookie scouting process? Maybe something that you're like, hey, I used to do this a lot, now I'm shifting, or here's just a different perspective I have in the 2025 version of Betz as opposed to, I don't know, the 2018 turd.
Oh man, 2018. Yeah, that was a version. I think for me, it's so easy in this process to look for the good in every player. Their best plays, their highlights, the best play of each player is kind of what you want to see happen. Well, that's in college, and in the NFL, it's not so simple. So I like to look for now, like, kind of how things go wrong, or like what a player doesn't do well on film, because if they're not matched in the right situation with the right quarterback or the right scheme, like, how could this not go the way we think it could go? And the truth is, like, these guys coming from college, there's a lot of players that are going to hit, but there's so many that are going to fail. And sometimes if you just see stuff through a rose-colored, lens, like, you miss out on the red flags of a player of how they operate or how they play. So for me, I'm looking for, like, what don't they do well on film, or what's missing from this player's profile that I'm just ignoring, that I used to ignore. Stuff like that for sure.
Yeah. I love that. I start out a pessimist on every on every prospect.
I'm a jerk.
I go in basically as, like, you prove it to me. You know what I mean? It's like, because the truth for fantasy football, the truth is very few of these guys are going to be impactful. And there might be 10, right? There might be 10 rookies that make an impact. That's a big number. If we, how many rookies made an impact this year? I mean, we could count them out, but it's probably 10 or about there, fewer. I don't know.
At running back, it was maybe 2.
It was 2. It was Bucky and Tyrone Tracy, and those weren't the guys that you thought were going to be the impact guys. So my point is, every year, we're going to scout 50 guys. You're going to go 4 rounds deep in your rookie draft. They're not going to hit. Most of them are not going to hit. So when I scout, I'm scouting from a fantasy football perspective, not an NFL perspective. There's plenty of guys that are going to go out there and have a long career like Samaje Perine and really not be someone that matters for most fantasy weeks, of their long NFL career. So I'm really looking for elite skill set, difference makers, whether that's highly drafted guys or lower drafted guys. I'm wanting skill set. So I'll hop in with my thing that I've learned or changed on is to focus a lot, like zoom. It's ironic. Zoom in on the player itself when I'm watching film. Ironically, really trying over the course of the years, I have just really grown to not, broadcast film is fun to watch, but it's not good it's just not as good as scouting. So anywhere I can get an all 22 and see, especially for running backs, I want to see the perspective from behind them. I want film that's zoomed out, but I want to zoom in on what did the player do given the situation? Because sometimes when you watch a broadcast, you see this guy break through this hole and just like, 40, 50-yard touchdown, breakaway speed, awesome. You watch it from the back and you go, I mean, it was just like it was great track move, and that's not taking anything away, but good speed, explosiveness, whatever. But you've got to, and at wide receivers, you watch all the routes. You don't watch all the receptions because this guy might be just open all the time and a quarterback can't get him the ball. So it can't all be production. I mean, we take everything in here. We are not film bros and we are not stat bros. We are everything bros. We're gonna try to look
You're everything
at,
bro.
Yeah, I'm like an everything bagel, but I'm a human, which is like that's the best version of a bagel for sure. And so we just try to be the best human we can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was thinking of like the difference between DeAndre Swift and Saquon Barkley behind the same offensive line, and you go, Swift had moments where you go, man, he just shot through there because it was blocked for him and he wasn't touched. And you look at Swift, and now we're a lot of years removed from where he was in Dynasty, but it's like he's a better athlete than actual running back. Like in terms of seeing the field and running the ball the way that it's supposed to, where Saquon is just a different cat. Where you could say that
incredible athlete and incredible running back.
You could see that with the Giants, obviously, and they took him number 2 overall. But it's like some of these players fit in their scheme, their offensive lines kicked butt. And then you zoom out and you go like, I just don't know if that's going to translate in a different scheme. And we can't guess whatever team they're on. There's so much speculation there, but we can see with our eyeballs like, hey, that wasn't there and he made something out of nothing. So I do agree with that. I've kind of swung on the pendulum here about comps, and I don't know how you guys feel about it. A lot of times the players that are thrown out are usually copied and pasted from somebody else. Like, this player reminds me of this. And all we're trying to do is really describe players, and that's fine. Like, I've never seen Omarion Hampton play in the NFL before. I've seen him play in college, and I'm trying to describe him. And so comps can provide a range. And so what I've learned is that I can hold really loosely a comp while not making it the end point. And I think that's what a lot of people want to do is they bring up a player, what they're like, and then they go, oh, well, that must mean that they're going to have that same fantasy production. It's like, as a prospect, I can look at certain players, and personally, I feel fine calling somebody, he's like Kendre Miller coming out of TCU, who was a good prospect on film.
Now we think about him, and it's not great.
Exactly. And so that's all I want to say is when we use comps for a player, a lot of times you'll hear people use the phrase shades. They're shades of this player. And I think that's fine. It's like, I kind of see this. I'm trying to describe, like, I have a player today that I described as Dave Montgomery with a little more giddy up. It's like, okay, we kind of know what runner David Montgomery is. He can handle a workload. You think of him for fantasy, but all I'm really trying to do is compare him and compare their body and their running style. So, but David Montgomery's everybody.
I'm interested who that is going to be. I've got my guess, but comps are pretty important to me. But they're personal. You know what I mean? Like they're for myself. My comps, I'll share my comps, but they really are different because I write down comps for everybody. Sometimes multiple comps.
Like who's my comp? That's what I want to know.
If I can. But each one for me sometimes is different. Sometimes it's like I see this running style. You know, he's an upright runner, so it reminds me of DMC or whatever. But oftentimes for me, when I'm doing a comp, I'm not comping just height, weight, speed, running style. I'm comping projected skill set and what type of a role they will fill in the NFL. And so when that is my comp for me, when that's the rationale, I tend to maybe this is kind of what you've learned, is maybe I'm holding on to this too closely. Because I tend to, that matters a lot to me. If I think that I know how they will be used in the NFL, that could be great. That could be like, you know, he's going to have touchdown opportunity and passing work opportunity, a 3-down skill set, you know, great. Or, you know, this is a guy who's going to be a 1-2 down banger, and I don't want that for fantasy type of, you know, outlook. So I guess it depends on the player. But it'll be fun to share some comps today.
Yeah, you got to let that go, Jason. You know, you just got to cast that aside, man. Can't hold on to that.
Blow it like a dandelion.
Betz,
exactly.
You reminded me of this awesome, famous graphic of David Montgomery where they basically compared him to every running back known to man.
Yeah, speaking of comps, that was like, this was all time. I think it was on an ESPN broadcast of an Iowa State game, right? Back when David Montgomery was there in college. The feet of Saquon Barkley, the vision of Le'Veon Bell, the strength of Ezekiel Elliott, and the athleticism of Sony Michel, which in hindsight sounds very funny, but at the time, Sony Michel was a very highly touted first-round pick, NFL draft pick. But yes, the comps thing, like, I like in some ways, and I use them too sometimes, but like I agree with you, Kyle. I think a lot of times once you say the name or you say, oh, this guy reminds me of that guy, my thought immediately is also, oh, that's who they're going to be in the NFL. But it's obviously not always the case. So yeah, as long as you provide some context around it, I think comps are good and can be valuable.
Yeah, I think if you talk to 2021 Kyle, he would have said like, oh, comps are the worst. We don't need those. And now I'm like, okay, there's a nuanced approach that I need to learn. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll jump into these running backs.
Hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL.
We're going to start with running backs. And just to give you a little tease, we're going to do running backs again next week. There's no way that we can fit in this class. Now, last year, we did just one episode on the running backs, and we talked a little bit later on about some of the deeper names, but
math checked out.
Yeah, it made sense. So I feel good about our process. This year, This year's really flipped. Like last year's wide receivers were so deep, and I remember a lot of people talking about how it was supposed to be deep, but their prospect models and there were just all these warts on all these players, and they didn't think it was actually going to be good, and it wasn't going to be a successful wide receiver draft class. It was a very successful wide receiver draft class for incoming rookies, a lot of difference makers, and it looked great. And obviously we were like down on the running backs, and they did not really hit this last year. This year should be, I think, the opposite. I think it's going to be, right now there's like 2 stud wide receivers, a couple other, good prospects. But last year was just so many that we loved. And it's very different because the running backs this year feel like there's a handful that are better than anyone last year.
Yes. I was going to ask you guys before we even jumped into these guys, like in particular, comparing last year's class, like would you take all 5 of the names we're going to talk about today above anybody last year? And obviously, like in hindsight, we know the issue with Jonathan Brooks re-tearing the ACL, but like thinking about the class, like I'm pretty sure as a prospect, all of these guys are better than even Jonathan Brooks last year.
Not for me. There's just talking as a prospect. Obviously, Trey Benson didn't do anything, but as a prospect coming in, he had a higher score in my rankings than one of these guys. Okay. But yeah, for the most part, most of these guys would have been at the top of last year.
It is interesting because Travion Henderson, who we'll get to from Ohio State, was a part of that class last year, and then he went back to school, wins a national championship. It's great. But I was thinking back, and I was asking Betz, like, if he was a part of that class, would he have gone ahead of Brooks? And he dealt with some injuries and stuff, and he's an older prospect now. But it is interesting to think, like, if you were to redraft and put some of these guys in there, where would they line up? And then what draft capital did you use last year? Like, I'm in a league where I used the 108 on Trey Benson. And at the time, I'm like, sweet, I get a running back who I think is going to step into a role. And then I look a year later, it's like, oh, they extended James Conner. Cool. I don't really know what to do anymore. But this year's class is much better. We will get to Ashton Jeanty, but I did want to just say, when we look at all these players, we have a scouting process. We also have a production profile that's there in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus that kind of says, here's the ideal height, weight, breakout age. Here's what we look for in terms of production. Like, they had this percentage of the team's yards and touchdowns. Those things matter because we've done the research over the last decade and found this is what translates to fantasy football. And at the end of the day, I'm going to say this again. Jason, I know will say this again. We are about fantasy football. That's what we care about. We love the sport. We love these athletes, all this stuff, but we care about an end result of how does this translate to fantasy? And so we can give a million scouting takes, and if this player doesn't get a workload, who cares? Like, it's not going to matter in the NFL. So, why do you guys think it's so important?
One thing that I think I'm just going to hopefully call my shot here. I'm going to call my shot, but I'm hopefully right. The combination of this year's draft class being far better at running back with what happened in the NFL last year, which was that the teams that really bypassed running back, Dallas, Denver, those teams felt it. And the teams that invested in running back last year, the Ravens and the Eagles going out and drafting like the stud running back or in free agency, signing the stud running backs, it's a copycat league. What works, what has success, teams copy the next year. So I think the combination of the incoming draft class with the success in the NFL of stud running backs mattering for wins and losses, you're going to have more draft capital into these guys. I think the first 2 rounds, you're going to see most of these guys go.
Yeah. What I know we brought up the stat last week, but only 13 offensive skill position players this year right now are being mocked in the first 2 rounds. And usually we get around 20 plus. So while there is a shortage of overall talent, I think in the running back position, I think my early guess is that we're going to see 6 plus names that we see on day 1 and day 2, which is great because I think some of these guys are going to get early day 2 draft capital that makes them really viable. So let's just start at the top. Ashton Jeanty of Boise State. You've probably heard about him.
Who?
Maybe.
Yeah, no.
It's funny figuring out, like, when you find a player like this that's talked about as like the player in college football that everyone knows, and then you kind of like rewind the film and go like, okay, so where did this come from? Where did this story start? It was interesting to me to find out that like he was with a military family, like his family was stationed in Italy. Then they came over and then he's like, I want to play football. So let's find a place to play football. So he went to Texas. I went to Frisco, Texas, and was awesome. Same high school as Marvin Mims, and still ends up at Boise State. Like, at first, is there any discount you guys are giving of, hey, this isn't a Power 5 school the way that, like, I look at some of these other schools, Alabama or whoever. Is there any of that, or should we just throw that aside right now?
Yeah, there is a smidge of that. There is a slight some of his moves, he's got a couple things he does. Like, for instance, he has an unbelievable stiff arm. He uses it all the time. He gets out on the edge and he stiff arms guys nonstop. It works every time. But he's like 5'9". This is not a guy with this wingspan that can, I'm like, well, and because he's playing in a smaller conference without, the same freaks in the SEC, it was like, okay, is that stiff arm move going to work when guys have, 4-inch longer arms that can just kind of wrap around you? That's one. However, The reason I say just a little is because he does have, he had some games this year, Oregon, Penn State, where I was really wanting to see, like, how does he play against some of the better athletes? And while maybe the numbers on the games weren't as good as they were in the smaller conference, you still saw those plays. You saw his other move that he does all the time is it's like this little bowling ball where he runs into a crowd or runs into a guy and he just bounces back 2 yards and then boom, he's off again. He does it over and over where it's just like whenever a pile, when you run into a pile, you see it every now and then in the NFL, but he does it like every third play. Whenever he runs into a group, it's like, I don't know if he's using his arm to push back or if it's magic or what it is, but he just always, boom, he's back 2 yards and he starts over really fast. And I worry about those two being as effective in the NFL. But when I saw him in the big games, he still did them, and he did them to success. So, it's a very minute whisper of a worry.
Yeah, I think to speak to your point there, Jason, on some of the tougher competition, like when he did face it, there's one run from this past college football playoff against Penn State where like he's kind of stuffed right at the line, and then a linebacker comes up and meets him and bounces off him, and then a safety comes up and he bounces off of him, and then before you know it, it's should have been a 2-yard gain and now it's a 9-yard gain. And that's not going to show up on ESPN on, Sunday morning or whatever, but like those little runs are kind of what show you what he could do against really tough competition. Like that was one of the better defenses in the country this past year, but I don't think the NFL is going to care that much. And so I don't really care as much about the smaller school, not necessarily the best conference type of thing. Every mock you look at has him going round 1. I think that I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't go in the top 32 of the NFL draft, probably top 15, 17, something like that. So the NFL is not going to care. I don't care. So,
the Raiders, the Cowboys, and the Chargers.
Yes.
I don't see how he makes it past those 3 teams in the first round.
Yes.
Those 3 teams are going to have to look at themselves and look at that player. And if he gets to any one of those 3 teams, they're going to have to look themselves in the mirror for passing on him, and I don't think all 3 will pass.
Agreed.
On him.
Yeah, the top landing spots I'm seeing are Dallas, Raiders, Chargers, and then other teams that have opportunity: Steelers, Vikings, Broncos. If you want to throw in the Chiefs, that's fine too. It's like there are multiple teams too. Like it'd be different if we would say like, I don't really see a great landing spot in the first round. It's like no, there's spots, and he can back it up. He's the second running back to win the Maxwell Award, which is the top all-around player in college football in the last 20 years. Derrick Henry was the only other one. So maybe you've heard of him before. The short part, you brought that up, Jason. It's interesting with like a stiff arm. Usually it's like, I don't think this is a good thing. It's like the lack of height helps the stiff arm a lot of times. And I also can't tell, I was watching the Oregon film, like tackle breaking is one of those skills that you can look at and be like, that's awesome. That's a highlight play. And then other times I go, that was just a really bad angle. Is that because he's shorter? Is this a bad defender who's not going to be in the NFL? There's a couple times where I go, they're just taking terrible angles at this guy, but 151 forced missed tackles, that's a record in terms of college football. So,
well, yeah, of course it's a record. He breaks 4 or 5 on every play. It's like I was watching and I have not seen that stat. I didn't know that stat that he was the leading. I knew I would have bet my life that he broke that record because I've never seen someone break more tackles every single play. It's wild, his play style. I feel like he greases himself up, or some people can't tackle this dude. As far as the lanes, it's speed. It's just speed. He's shockingly fast. No one expects him to be that fast and that bursty. I think there's a couple of guys that we're going to talk about today that you constantly see defenders taking bad angles. It reminds me of Arian Foster back in the day, where when you've got that deceptive speed and you don't look like you should be that fast, people just guess wrong because they're used to this. They've done this their whole life. It's muscle memory for them. They know the angle to take on all these guys, but it's just different when you have a little bit more speed than you should have and you take a bad angle and then it's like, dang it, that's another touchdown.
Arian Foster is such a fun name to throw out there, but I don't know if you do this. You, Mike, and Andy individually bring up Arian Foster because I think it's like the genesis of the show. And he's a big deal. in fantasy.
He's a big deal, and he had just exceptionally weird, deceptive speed. I think his 40 was like 4.65 or something. Like I think he was injured when he went to the combine and shouldn't have ran. But then in the NFL is just weirdly fast, long strides.
He had the game speed.
I've got, so speaking of comps, my comp, and it was funny because I was talking to Andy and Mike about this. I was like, he just reminds me of this kind of combination of skill set, kind of size, speed, power, and unique. He's a really unique running back. And the only other guy that kind of reminds me of him is MJD. And I was watching one of the games, and like the third game I was scouting, and then the announcers were saying, "Oh yeah, you comped him to MJD." I was like, "Yeah, see, I knew it." But that's my comp for him. He's small, but not small. You know, he's small but yoked. He's a thick, short back, and I think his speed is going to be very nice if he runs at the combine.
Yeah, I wrote down on the high end, and I'm talking for fantasy too, but shorter Bijan Robinson, which is a tackle breaking machine, and I think he has better long speed than even Bijan.
He definitely does.
But
Bijan has incredible medium speed.
Bijan
he never breaks the long one.
No, but sometimes Bijan's so patient. You're like, come on, dude, just go for it. I did want to bring this up as a receiver because I found out this stat is just wild that this past year he wasn't used as much in the receiving game. The year before, I mean, he had 43 receptions and he accounted for 23% of his team's receiving yards. Since 2013, here are the only two day one running backs, so first round running backs, that saw more than 20% of their team's receiving yards. Some guy named CMC and some guy named Jahmyr Gibbs. That's it. So you're getting an unreal production profile, not just with rushing, but even as a receiver. And whoever's going to take him in the first round is going to do what they did with Gibbs. Like, we're going to use this dude and maximize him. So, Betz, any final thoughts on Jeanty?
I just think he's a really, really good prospect. We'll see if any of these other guys like happen to sneak into the back of the first round, but you look at his production, you look at the draft capital that should be there. He's a really strong rookie profile here that, I mean, guys fail all the time, but if there's one running back in this class that you're saying this guy is probably going to stick around the league and be very, very good for fantasy for quite a few years, it's definitely Jeanty, obviously.
Yeah.
So in my scoring model, he is just behind Bijan in my overall like prospect book. So that's where he is. And honestly, the difference there to me, because he's got, you know, even better production, I think it is kind of the conference that he's playing in that it gave me more confidence on the Bijan side. But I think it's important. We were talking about this in the office just before the show. The 101 right now in a non-super flex league is going to be Ashton Jeanty. And the question is, where is he right now today in Dynasty startup rankings? I know where he is for me because I just did him for our Sunday release, our Super Bowl release of our Dynasty startups. But how many running backs would you take over currently unknown destination Jeanty?
I would take Gibbs and Bijan confidently.
Yep.
And then from there, I'd have to like start.
That's exactly right. That's where we got to. That's exactly what all of us ended up saying. Completely independent. It was like Bijan and Gibbs. And then, yeah, I mean, he might be the running back 3. And to me, he is the running back 3.
I was going to say, I think for me, he's right there. Like I would take him over Brees right now for sure. And before, like that was kind of where the previous tier was. Like it ends at Brees, and then you can go from there. I would have him over Brees. So yeah, I think RB3, RB4, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, it's really hard to poke holes if the NFL just says you're the dude. And it was fun going back through. Like shorter running backs usually don't get picked this high, but we've seen first round guys. So Gibbs is 5'9" as well. CH was shorter. Built a little different, but Doug Martin, fellow Boise State running back, also taken in the first round, 5'9" or shorter.
Muscle hamster.
So let's go to the next name. North Carolina's Omarion Hampton, who I did some digging. He was named after Omarion from the boy band B2K.
Oh,
which was
no.
like an early 2000 thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Thank you for that research, Kyle.
Yeah, I did. There's some other research that anyway, moving on. he was a 4-star recruit. He was Mr. Football in North Carolina. And I'll just say he looks like a running back. He looks like an NFL running back is supposed to look like in terms of just pure body. It was a different UNC team where you had Drake May the year before and you had some other prospects. And then they had to change out their whole offensive line. Their quarterback, Max Johnson, got hurt in the very first game. So I will say, in terms of the team and what he had to work with, he had a lot of different changes and put up a monster season this final year, 1,600 plus rushing yards, 15 touchdowns, and then 38 receptions. So the production is there, 6 foot, 220. He's about to turn 22. Like, he pretty much checks the box of, you look like an NFL running back. But Betz, I want to get your thoughts first. Like, these are players that it's really easy for me to say, like, he's probably going to be beginning of round 2. And so in a dynasty league, like, that's going to be a high pick in rookie drafts.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty decent chance he's the second running back off the board, at least at this point in the process when you look at kind of consensus big board ranks and mock drafts and stuff like that. So the draft capital should be very good. The production profile is very good. I know that you love stats like this, Kyle. I found this one. ACC players with 1,500 plus rushing yards and 15 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons: Lamar Jackson, Dalvin Cook, Travis Etienne, and Omarion Hampton. So
Lamar is insane.
That's hilarious. So analytically, he looks great. I will say, when I watched him, like, I didn't see a lot of special make you miss ability with Hampton. I thought that his vision was pretty inconsistent, like a ton of times where it's like, man, stop running into the back of your blockers, like at the line of scrimmage. Now, I will say the offensive line, like you said, Kyle, was not great. In 2023, they were 100th in the country in run block grade. Everything was out of shotgun, which sometimes for some running backs works very well. Other running backs, they don't like it as much, and they don't, you don't get downhill as fast, so it kind of can affect you. But I will say, like, he seems like a very solid running back that didn't do anything in particular that was incredible, is what I would say about him. But the production's there. He can be a bell cow. He can catch the football. He can do all of those things. So I definitely like him, but I don't think he's necessarily a slam dunk prospect by any means.
I wrote, I wouldn't say he has, quote, moves or wiggle the way that, like, I'd want to playing video games, and I'm using a silly analogy, but I think he uses more his sheer physicality. And I watched the game with Drake, a couple of them with Drake May, just to be like, okay, how did this look in this offense with somebody who's going to be an NFL quarterback? And he did get to break a few long ones against Clemson. He fumbled at the goal line in one of them, which was sad. But he also runs more upright, and maybe that's just when you're a big dude, you can't hunch down as much. But I think he's someone the NFL will clearly like, and he'll be an early round 2. Jason, do you feel that way?
Yeah, he's my running back too, for sure in this. And I know, I don't know for sure if that's the same with Mike. I know for Andy, he really likes Omarion. I liked him a lot. I grew to like him more and more. In the beginning, I had a lot of similar thoughts to what both of you already said, which was, he's good, but you were kind of unimpressed, Betz, and that you'd watch and you're like, this is an NFL running back. I mean, he looks like an NFL running back. Body, size, style of play. But the more that I watched, the more I understood how valuable he was to this team, how every down, I mean, incredible pass protection all the time.
Yep.
He is a player that can be on the field 100% of the time. If a team invests in him, and I've got him with a first-round grade. So if a team were to take him in the first round, he should rightly skyrocket up startup rankings, because that means that they're drafting a player to be a 3-down back. That is what his special feature is. He is built for a workload. He can handle it. He is good in the passing game. He's good in the pass protection game. He is a very capable runner. I think he just looks like he's the most well-rounded prospect in this year's class to me. Can do a little bit of everything, has enough speed. I don't think he has a trump card where it's like,
that's what I was going to ask.
If I get this seam, I'm gone. Or if I need to move this pile, there's no chance I can't, or anything. There's no, like, he is the best in the class at this one trait. But if you're building a video game character here, he doesn't have any 10s, but he doesn't have any 7s either. He's like straight 8s across the board. His vision was good. His balance, I think his balance is my favorite trait. You see a lot of times where people would, try to make weakish tackles, and it just didn't even like affect him. It just like let his body and his legs kind of move. As a runner, it's ironic. It is an ironic comp because he's not the size and he doesn't have the same like pass catching superpower. But just as a runner, I saw a lot of Austin Eckler in him as far as how he wins. And my overall comp was Josh Jacobs. I think he's built for a workload. He can do absolutely everything. I think an NFL team's going to love this guy. I think they're going to look at him and just say, this is a reliable human being that's going to do everything right. And he got extra yards on most plays. I'm a huge fan of Omarion. For me, he's like a clear tier 2 by himself.
Okay.
So like Jeanty is a tier 1 by himself. Omarion is a tier 2 by himself. And then these next guys who I still really like are a tier behind them.
I like what you brought up about the workload thing, Jason, just real quick. Because I think in college, like we see it and it's like, oh, great, you touch the ball a ton. Like, but that's a signal of like, you're good. Like you are the offense.
Right.
He had 18 games over the last 2 years with 18 plus carries, averaged over 20 touches per game these last 2 seasons. So like you can load him up with touches and rely on him. And obviously volume is king in fantasy. And if he lands in a spot like early round 2 that the depth chart is cleared for him, I think for fantasy, like he's going to touch the ball enough and he's good enough and it's probably going to work.
This is the type of running back, and nothing to do with Austin Eckler because I'm really talking about Harbaugh. But if he were to go to the Chargers, a bigger, stronger workload guy who can really do everything right, I think the fit is perfect there, and that would be incredible because that's that would be crazy draft capital. I guess you could take him in the second with that pick, but that would be a perfect fit for me.
The high-end comp I gave, and to compare it to fantasy as well, is Joe Mixon, who went 48th overall, and you're going to get a crazy workload. I think that, you kind of see over time with Mixon, it's like, is the efficiency there? It's gone, but like crazy workload for a very, very long time, part of that class in 2017. And then the medium was what I said is Dave Montgomery with more giddy up, where Dave Montgomery is good at a lot of things.
That's who I thought when I said I've got my guess who David Montgomery with more giddy up. Both those names crossed my mind with him.
Okay, I'm going to give you the low end because I'm the person
the range.
I need to dig up the dirt and just say, hey, I've seen players like this, and we've drafted players with this draft capital before. And I hate this one because it's also a North Carolina player, but Javonte Williams was a tackle-breaking machine who could pretty much do it all, was drafted 35th overall. And then my other low-end comp is Tank Bigsby.
That being said, Javonte Williams was going to be awesome until he got injured. I mean, he was like, where was he in Dynasty startup rankings after his rookie year?
Oh, he was like
a
top 10 running back
5
sure.
or 6. Yeah, I mean, he was way up there, and then he got injured. And
yeah, if you get Javonte's rookie year from Hampton, I'm taking that every time.
Yeah, and especially value-wise, like you could have done so much with Javonte, flip Javonte, whatever you needed to do. But I think just to summarize, this is a player that's really, really good. And I think the NFL will kind of agree with what we were talking about. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about these Ohio State running backs. All right, we're back, and I'm just going to group these guys together because, well, they both played at Ohio State. Travion Henderson, and then we'll get to Quinshon Judkins, and then we'll finish with Kaleb Johnson of Iowa. Travion Henderson, coming out of high school, guys, 5-star recruit, the number 1 overall running back, and out of the gate was awesome. One of those players that if you play Devy or if you were like, hey, I'm deep in the Dynasty weeds, he was a name that you knew about. And I think a lot of people were shocked that he went back to college. He did win a national championship, and I did do a lot of NIL research. He got paid this past year, so I think it's okay. Chipotle got some money from Chipotle.
Love that.
Oh, yeah?
And this one, Hollister, to each their own. To
looking
each
good.
their own.
I mean,
They're
hey,
giving out money.
if Hollister wanted to pay me, I would do it.
You'd be just a model for Hollister?
Just to wear the clothes on the show here? Yeah, I'd do that.
Yeah. So Henderson, 4 years at Ohio State. We talked earlier, like if he came out early, like his breakout age is one of the best in this class. It was right before he was 19 years old. He balled out as a freshman. And you think about those teams that he was with, it was CJ Stroud at Ohio State. It was some of these awesome wide receivers we talk about. My biggest question when I get to Ohio State players is like, I could name 10 players of the last 3 or 4 years that are in the NFL. And my question is like, is he a special player part of that group? I think that he has special traits. I wonder for fantasy if he's going to translate the same way. So, Jason, you can read straight from your black book first, and then maybe I'll let Betz talk because this is where Betz and I disagreed the most.
On Travion Henderson?
Yes.
I think it's interesting. If you guys disagreed the most, I'm probably going to be right down in the middle. A lot of my comments are about his speed. His speed is fantastic. Everything is looked fast and undersized. And he's listed at, this is one of the guys. This was the guy who's listed at 215 in what I looked up. And I was like, this guy does not look like he's 215. So I'm waiting for that weigh-in. Obviously very, very, very fast. I mean, that is his trump card. That's his superpower. He can catch, and he can catch in stride. There were a lot of things that I really liked. Everything he does is frenetic. Like, everything is exaggerated and just like I'm telling you, you go in motion, and it's like, look how fast I can run in motion. Every single thing he does is like, I promise you, if he's going to get water during a timeout, he is sprinting there as fast as he can.
Live fully, man. I get it. Yeah.
I don't think he's bad. I think he's really, really good. I didn't see an elite player. Just constant burst. A lot of ways that this guy can win in the right system. And I saw. I mean, this is not a comp, but I kept seeing some flashes of Jahmyr Gibbs, where it's like, oh, okay, that's a special speed to the outside. That's a speed where it's like, if you're on one of the hashes and you're going the other direction, those defenders aren't going to catch him. You're going to get that first down if you need 4 yards. And it's really exciting for a player that can catch and has that speed. I just kept waiting to see like something else, some more stuff there. So I like him a lot. He does have a trump card, and he's a pass catcher. So for fantasy purposes, this is the only player that I've scouted so far that I don't have a comp for. Usually I've got 1 to 5 right off the bat. I don't know what to make of Henderson. I can't wait to see what he weighs in at and what his draft capital is. I could be very excited about him, or if he falls in drafts, I'll probably let him pass by and look elsewhere, because I think you're going to need some investment and or the right situation. Kind of like we talked about 2 years ago with Devon Achane. This was a player I was in love with the speed. If he didn't get in the right system, it wasn't going to work, and I was very kind of down on him. I did not expect him to get the picture perfect place. And then when he landed on the Dolphins, I was like, I'm in. He's my guy. Like, this is going to work. It's the perfect system for him. So I'm probably in the middle between you guys. So which one of you loves Henderson? Let's get the bull case for Henderson.
So I will say I love when the data matches the film. And when you watch Henderson, it's impossible not to watch him and be like, that dude is fast. He's super explosive.
Yes.
He's going to absolutely crush the NFL Combine. Like when we talk about, when is that? February? March? When is that? The Combine.
It's coming up the end of February, early
When
March.
we do our post-Combine update and we talk about risers, like I guarantee he was on the list, right? He's going to crush the 40. He was number 1 in this class in the percentage of his plays that went for 10-plus yards. And when you watch him, you say, that makes sense. He was also dead last among the guys we're going to talk about in this class in broken tackle rate. And when you watch him,
that's interesting.
That makes sense. So he is a guy
so that's what I was seeing. That's exactly what I was seeing.
I think his upside case is the ceiling is massive. If he lands on a scheme and a system that knows how to use his speed to his strengths to get on the edge and just blow by guys. As far as a guy that you're going to hand the ball to 22 times a game and run between the hashes, I don't think that's where he will win in the NFL. But like Jason said, you get him on, swing routes, you get him the ball in space as a pass catcher. He is so electric and so explosive that it will work if he lands in the right system. That's where I don't know where he'll go and how he'll fit, because as far as like a well-rounded NFL running back, I don't think he's near the top of the class. As far as, could this guy on like 15 or 16 touches with a mix of a couple catches per game be incredible for fantasy and the right offense? I think he could be that. It's just a matter of where he goes is kind of where I'm at. I know Kyle wasn't as in on the pass catching ability as me, but I just think he looks so natural, and when it happens, like a swing pass, a defender's right there, makes one guy miss, picks up 8 yards, first down. Like, I think he's going to do that type of stuff all the time.
I thought he was very smooth
in the NFL.
Very smooth in the receiving game.
Yeah.
In stride, didn't break. I thought he's a very, very smooth pass catcher.
But yeah, there's a lot to I just don't think he's a perfect prospect by any means.
Yeah. I said his route tree is, they didn't ask him to do a ton, but, when you have these NFL wide receivers,
why would you?
That are on there, it's like, yeah, why would you? But you can also look that there's another running back that's in this class from his team that was actually targeted more frequently per route. So like, he has the lowest targets per route run of this class. And I was just going back and forth with Betz because it looks like, okay, he caught 27 passes, 284 yards, a touchdown. You actually go back through, 30% of his receiving production came on one play against Texas, and it was a 75-yard screen, which Betz and I were talking about that play. It's like, he just got to run and do what he's great at, the explosive stuff. So I'll just say his best trait is he has good vision, he can see the field, and he can execute. But it scares me when I see certain players that, like, the long speed's great, and yet, like, that's just not going to happen the same way in the NFL. I worry about that when it comes to like some between the tackles. Now, the trajectory of this player is, I think he should have come out 2 years ago. That's like usually my bias with running backs is you should have come out. Now he stayed in NIL, makes it a different world. I think his footwork is really good, so I think the right situation it can work. I think as a receiver, I said he's capable. I just don't see it as a plus, maybe the way that you guys do.
Yeah. So as a receiver, I will say this. I don't usually, for college backs, give too much care about the route tree. It's nice to see someone catch a wheel route, but what I'm watching when I'm personally scouting is the hands and the transition. Because most of the receptions that running backs are going to get are the leak outs, the dump offs, the little short crossers, the screen passes. And on those, there's guys like Braylon Allen last year as a rookie who had really good hands. He's going to catch everything. But the transition from catch to run is like, okay, he's going to catch it and then turn around and get going, tackled. So I really like that. That's just a personal scouting thing for me. I'm just watching, do they have good hands to catch the ball, and are their eyes on their hands? Do they have to be watching this? Do they have to be watching this and to get it and then have that little millisecond change of like, okay, now I'm a runner? Or is this a guy who can run, catch the ball in stride, and keep going kind of like a wide receiver? And if you're a speedster, you have to be able to do that. So that's what I saw. I didn't judge anything pro or con on a route tree per se.
Yeah. I did have a comp. This is a mid-level comp. And I think if this player got the draft capital of Miles Sanders, who went 53rd overall, say that's a good NFL running back, not a great one.
Miles Sanders is my comp for a different player here we got today.
Really? Yeah. Okay. And once again, we're just throwing out names as I see shades of this. Here's a combination of this, not as an endpoint for them. But any final thoughts, Betz, you want to give on your boy Henderson before we get to Judkins? I mean, he's your boy. He's your guy.
I guess so. I think he fits today's game for fantasy if the scheme is right, meaning catch the ball, get in space, be explosive. He's a guy that I'll reserve judgment for in terms of like final how I view him until after the NFL draft when we know where he goes. Because I think out of all the running backs we're going to talk about today, to me, he's probably the most scheme-dependent player on the list.
I would agree with that of the ones we're talking about today, but I think you mentioned something really important, which is today's NFL. Like, he does fit today's NFL because it's so many committees. There's going to be very few workhorse backs, which is what we like about Omarion, that he could come in and maybe be a 3-down guy who doesn't leave the field, plays 70% of snaps. That's not going to be Henderson, but in today's NFL, you look at the backfields, and it's like, do you want the David Montgomery or the Jahmyr Gibbs? You want the Gibbs. You want the guy who's got the explosive, long speed, the breakaway touchdowns, the receiving work, even when they're both good.
I think it brings up a conversation, which I think we'll get into with Judkins, is like, I look at his teammate who started off at Ole Miss, was awesome as a freshman, and then this past year, this was the 1-2 punch. They went all the way to national championship, where I think he's a better runner of the football and obviously not nearly as explosive. So it's kind of like, what do you want in fantasy? Are you going to get someone who profiles more as a red zone runner, who has a bigger body and can be the hammer, or do you want Henderson? And the only way I knew how to describe it is like, Judkins is a sedan. He is a Camry, and there's nothing wrong with a Camry if that's where you're trying to get your family somewhere. My mom drives a Camry, and look at her. She's great. But here's the problem. You're just not gonna get there the same way. And so it's kind of like, what does the team need? What do they want? And both of them can work out for fantasy.
Yeah, Henderson is a 2-seater sports car. You know what I mean?
Sexy.
Like
he's a Miata.
He's not he's not a Miata. He's a 2-seater Corvette that has a top down, right? And he's not the the nice sedan.
Jason,
but the thing is if you need 4 people, Henderson can't do that. That's got to be Judkins. You're not going to get there as fast, but you're going to take more people.
What a comp.
Who was your comp for Henderson? I missed it, or I forgot.
Miles Sanders.
Oh, that was your comp? What? For Travion Henderson?
Yeah.
Dude, Miles Sanders is not nearly as explosive, or he wasn't as explosive coming out of Penn State.
No, he's not that fast.
He was explosive at Penn State.
No, he wasn't. My comp for Miles Sanders, what did Miles Sanders run? Like a 4.59?
I'll look it up.
My comp for Miles Sanders is Judkins. So
really?
It's funny when you could see things different ways. One of the things, as we've been talking, I want to bring up, we talk about what is our personal scouting style and our process. I purposely and actively avoid the statistical knowledge of these players before I actively avoid finding all the missed tackles forced, the most routes, the whatever. I don't want to be, because I know I'm going to know that. I know I'm going to go look, and that's objective data, right? I'm going to look and see how many yards, how many tackles broken, how many touchdowns, how many receptions, and I'll know that, and my opinion can't change looking at data. It's subjective. So I like looking at my film without knowing anything really about the player at all, what type of player, what usage, and all that. And so both of these guys, but especially with Judkins. Now, are we talking about Judkins now?
Yes.
We can do that.
So talking about Judkins, I watched a couple of games, and I couldn't figure it out. So after I watched a couple games, then I went to the box scores like, oh, okay, so this was a guy who broke out as a freshman, had monster stats, and then just kind of gotten worse each year. And then, okay, now I get it. And then I went back in. What did you look up Miles Sanders 40?
Yes, it was 4.49.
4.49. Okay. All right. Split the difference.
Betz, do you feel like, so this is a player that, depending on the landing spot, you could see him get 18 plus carries as just like, this is a bigger dude. He could handle it. It just kind of depends on that. So he's one of those players that's like, oh, I get why he had production in college, but like his lateral agility, I didn't find very good. I mean, there was a play in the national championship game where he breaks through and his Camry just ran out of gas. Like he could have ran it in for the touchdown. Henderson would have, but Judkins. So is he dependent on, he needs the volume?
I think so. I mean,
yeah.
There's a few. Not a few. I mean, it's college. So these guys are all good. There's plenty of plays on tape where he rips off, a 30-yard touchdown run or something. But in the NFL, that's not the type of guy I see, where it's like you give this guy 18 to 22 touches in a game, and he's consistently going to give you, 5 or 6 yards on every one of those touches that will compile his way to fantasy points. And if he gets a goal line roll, I think he'll be very, very good at that. In all the games I watch with him, like at the goal line, he's super reliable, really can score touchdowns. And when he gets down inside the 5-yard line and they give it to him, he scores. But yeah, like I don't see a ton of make you miss ability, not a lot of lateral agility, stiff arm, kind of bounces off dudes, but not anything that wowed me, I would say. Definitely capable in the pass game. Like if they check it down to him on a swing pass, like he can catch the football, But as far as like the fluidity of what Henderson can do, it's not even close, in my opinion. So I think he's probably going to be picked on day 2. And if he lands in a spot where he's going to be the RB1, where you could see a path to 18, 20 touches, I think he's going to be good for fantasy. I do not see an insanely high ceiling, though, for his individual skill set, if that makes sense, which is crazy to say because when you look at the numbers, if you just look at like the spreadsheet version of this and you say, oh, this guy played in the SEC and the Big Ten, broke out as a true freshman, and put up all these yards and touchdowns, you would say, this guy's going to dominate in fantasy. But I don't think he's an incredible talent as far as that's concerned when you watch him play. That's my personal take.
But he said, and I did the interview, he said, I've always been a running back. I've known since I was 9 that I was born to do this. And I was like, this guy has tried so hard. He's gotten as far as he can. And I think he can be a good NFL runner. It is interesting about the pass catching stuff because Henderson looks more fluid, and yet he was targeted on a per route basis, the lowest of the class. And then Judkins, who's like, he's fine as a pass catcher, was targeted on the highest per route in the same exact system. So I just thought it was just interesting the way that they were used, and some of that's just check down situation, but it's like they were opposite ends of the spectrum on a per route basis. I do think Henderson just has way more explosive stuff that can matter for fantasy, but I also want to add, not many players get to go 40 yards in a game, guys. Like, it's so rare that happens. You get a handful of those during a season, and so if I can get somebody that profiles as a double-digit touchdown dude on the right offense, then Judkins, like if Judkins goes to the Chargers, how do you guys feel?
Whoever goes to the Chargers I'm
a sucker for the Chargers.
If it's in the first or second round, then I'm in on that player. They'll probably be my running back 2, unless it's Jeanty, and then they'll clearly be my running back 1. I mean, that's pretty much how I see that. I think that is the best location for any running back right now. I'd put, obviously, the other 2 we talked about, which Dallas and the Broncos, as very good landing spots as well. And then you brought some up. There's so many good spots for teams that need a running back, who will use a running back, and that I would expect to have good draft capital. I echo a lot of what Betz saw in Judkins. I was not in love with him. I didn't see a special player or an elite athlete. I saw an above-average guy who was tough as nails. I mean, he's strong and tough as nails. You want to talk about a guy who I feel like, he's one of those people that wants contact. He's looking to murder your face with his helmet. And he's not going out of bounds down the sideline. He's gonna slam into you and then he's gonna get up and he's gonna stand over you and do his best to not draw a 15-yard penalty. I mean, you love the production as a true freshman. It's unbelievable what he did at Ole Miss. I don't usually, and so far have not, go back and watch freshman year tape from these guys. I have found great success from fantasy predictions in caring much more about the most previous season rather than guys who were touted years ago and kind of got worse. And I think that what have you done for me lately is the most important aspect. And this past season, he was not bad. All of my notes are like decent athlete, strong and tough as nails. Not sure I love him. He can catch, and he could be a goal line. So for fantasy purposes, this is not a guy I'm poo-pooing. Good. He's got 220 pounds. He looks like he's got that. He can catch, and he can be a goal line. So if the draft capital's there, I'll be in. But I don't look at this guy and salivate. I'm not excited about the athleticism. Running back is one of those things. Again, we're not talking about. We're not going to have 8 guys that hit as rookie running backs. There aren't that many spots to land to be important. And when it comes to running backs, athleticism does really, really matter. So I'm lukewarm on him.
I feel like with both of these guys, I'm leaving it open-handed to say, I see their skill sets. I see what can work. We're going to get some more information in the combine. But then I really am going to let the draft dictate, like, who's RB3, Because I feel like the next guy we're going to talk about is in a different tier, and I think he might end up being round 3.
Kyle, you and I gotta go today after this recording, because I haven't done this, but we got to go watch some Miles Sanders tape and come back together and be like, Because what's funny is Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are as different of players.
Oh, I'm talking about for fantasy. I'm saying for fantasy
outlook, like
yes,
to be
that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay, all right.
No.
Okay, I'm like, I just could not see Miles Sanders as the like play style type of comp.
No, I'm saying that when the NFL tells us, hey, Judkins goes to the Chargers and Henderson goes to, it's an okay landing spot. I think we'd be like, okay, well then I would let that dictate.
You expect him to become a Miles Sanders for fantasy. Got it.
Who did have a couple of good years.
No, he's
got a bag of money.
Irrelevant.
Yep. All right, last name I'm going to bring up is Kaleb Johnson of Iowa, who had a monster. 21 touchdowns this past year is crazy stuff. There is a lot of context, though, needed when you're looking at his film, talking about his offensive line. I did see bets that he flipped his commitment to Iowa when he saw Iowa beat Penn State. He was at the game, saw Penn State lose, made him want to become a Hawkeye.
Good for you, Kaleb.
How do you feel about that pin man?
I'm very proud of him. Go Kaleb.
Yeah, I'll say my notes say, so Kaleb Johnson is a big dude, big boy. He has the NFL body. And I said, I respect his patience as a runner because I think in the right zone scheme, he can work. But I won't say that he can be the dude that can put his foot in the ground and cut back. He's just a bigger upright runner. And I need the right spot for those guys. They're fun to watch when they break the tackles and they go the distance, but his offensive line was awesome. And there's a lot of really good holes for him. So that's like my biggest question mark heading into the process. But the production profile, highest dominator rating of anybody in this class, 52%, is wild when you look at the final year. So the production and the body size says this dude should make it. I think he's probably going to end up more in round 3, which, is not a big difference, but I think he's probably more in that draft pick spot.
I've seen some love for him in the back of the second round too. So yeah, somewhere in that range probably is where he'll land. Yeah, he's such an interesting guy to watch because sometimes, like I said, when the numbers match the tape, it's like, oh, this all lines up very well. Like when I watched him play, there was a lot of runs and plays on tape that I was like, oh, that seems so simple. Like he just did it. And I think what you're speaking to, Kyle, is like there's open lanes for him all the time. This offensive line was awesome. 4th in the country in PFF's run block grade. They didn't really throw a ton. So like he was the offense a couple years ago. He accounted for 15% of the receptions and had, I think, like 20 catches on the year, if that tells you anything about the offense. So he was the entire offense. I see, this is going to sound very silly. I see a lot of like Derrick Henry-esque running from him where it's like, he's not as strong. He's not nearly as fast in the open field as a complete freak, but like
he's not a superhuman.
Not a superhuman, but like very upright, not really going to be like shifty to make you miss, but like in his own scheme, if the lane is there, he's going to take it and he's going to go kind of thing. But outside of that, I didn't see anything crazy special.
I 100% understand your Derrick Henry comp. I saw it a lot. Derrick Henry is a guy that gets stuffed behind the line a lot. Derrick Henry gets stopped. There he goes, and he's gone, and he's not the same caliber of human. No one is. He's not going to be a 250-pound 4.4 running back. But I get that. My comps for him were Latavius Murray.
That's a great one.
Chris Ivory, Tevin Coleman. These guys that have really good speed and they're big backs. But he's not a phenomenal running back. Like, I am so hot and cold. Now, I know where I land on him. It took me a long time to figure out, do I like him or do I not like him for fantasy? Like, if I have to push my chips in, I've got to make a bet. Is he going to succeed or fail? For fantasy football purposes, I know where I landed. But watching the film, it was every play is hot and cold. It's like he get one-on-one tackler in the backfield, doesn't break it. You see that a lot. In the games where his offensive line didn't win, it's ironic because some of what I didn't like about him was, man, his offensive line was really good. He was patient. He waited for the hole to open. Very explosive, bursty, and gone 40 yards for a touchdown. That's wonderful, although most of it was running fast in a straight line. When it came to, like, he's not shifty. I didn't see a lot of shiftiness and broken tackles in that way. He outruns guys. He's got a lot of speed for a heavier back, which is something I freaking love, and I think has an exceptional hit rate in fantasy. If he weighs in at 220 and runs 4.4, that's a Jason Moore's always in. That is a, I will be in on 220-pound running backs who can run 4.4. I think that's what I saw on film. I think that's what he's going to do. And so in the end, it was like, he can catch. He didn't have a lot. He didn't have an exceptional receiving production profile, but he can catch the ball. It was over and over and over the same thing. And ironically, in the Ohio State game, my notes were his O-line lost most of the game. It was like his O-line's great, but now you're playing Ohio State, and all of a sudden your O-line's getting trashed, and he did nothing. He couldn't make something out of, whatever it is. You're making chicken soup out of chicken crap. He just ate a bunch of chicken crap. However, there were 2 opportunities in that game where it was like, oh, there's a hole, or there's a good, like, I think one was a reception, and both of those opportunities was like huge play. If you give this guy space, this is the other player that I was talking about. We were talking about Jeanty. This was the other player where, holy crap, every defender takes a wrong angle on him. Once he's down, once he's out in the open field, those guys are just, whoops, they didn't realize he was that fast. They just constantly took wrong angles. So in the end, I'm going to be in on him. Obviously his landing spot, so in the where I have landed now, which is not the end, as of now, I'm in on Kaleb Johnson. I went back and forth during the scouting process, but I like him a lot more than Judkins. After the NFL draft, that could easily flip and switch, right. But I just want the speed and burst and explosiveness from a non-200-pound running back. Some people are addicted to certain things, and that's
could be worse things.
That's my drug of choice.
Could be worse things, Jason.
Yeah.
Every man has his vice. And Betz, so you took him in our rookie mock draft, and I think right now he's ending up in kind of that mid to late first round, depending on what order of running backs you like in rookie drafts and one quarterback. And, we're going to shift through these, but like last year, this was the spot that people were taking Brooks at 107, 108. And now we have 4 or 5 guys that are in the mix to be taken in the first 7-8 picks, which is just awesome. So we're going to keep updating these, and you can get the full production profile. Like I'm looking at Kaleb Johnson's production profile that's there in the Dynasty Pass. It's like green. Like he checks all the boxes that we want. And I think that's something that you can do with every single player. I go through, and I obviously love looking at the stats, but it's like I get to mix that with what we talk about on the podcast with film and then say, okay, what usually translates? And that's really all we care about with production. Like, does this translate to the NFL? And I think he can be a 3-down guy. Like, he's big. And there could be some team that just says he's the dude. Like, you brought up Latavius Murray, and some people would be like, what? That dude had a long career. That dude was an upright runner, and he had some monster years. Like, he's Raiders. He had some years where he came in as the backup and was still relevant for fantasy, and that's a good career. And I think Latavius was 3rd round. I could be wrong. Somewhere around there.
Latavius was the 6th. It was 6th round.
Oh wow!
So he had what made Latavius Murray great and gave him a long career is that he was 230 pounds and ran like a 4.4. I mean, those guys just work. Teams need those guys because they beat up on DBs. You get them to the second level, and they're going to crush the defense. And I really hope, like right now on like landing spot watch, I would agree with you that this isn't the most. I think Henderson is probably the most like landing spot dependent, but Kaleb Johnson is the one I'm rooting for the most to have round 2 capital. Because if a team invests in him, if a team goes, I want that explosive playmaker in my running game, because if you give him 20 shots a game, he's gonna find a hole and have an explosive field flipping play, if not a drive-ending touchdown. And I'm hopeful that in today's NFL, that kind of explosivity will be what a GM is going for.
Explosivo. Okay.
We got there.
That's what we were hoping for. Yep. All right. That's going to do it for this episode. Next week, we will be back. Get to talk about some other running backs. Cam Scattaboo Some other names should be good. And make sure you go to ultimatedraftkit.com. Dynasty Pass will be out this Sunday. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.